If you ask someone why they like the World of Darkness and its related games, you'll probably get a different answer for every person. Their opinion will be colored by their favorite splats, when they were introduced to the game, how they were introduced, and of course, who they have been playing with. I don't think it's controversial to say that due to how role-playing games work, each individual group of players have developed their own cultural seedbed from which these games spring, and this has been the source of countless heated arguments ever since two people realized they had different ideas about what constitutes a good chronicle of Vampire the Masquerade. Before I start talking about why I enjoy World of Darkness, I think it's important for me to explain that I don't think there's any wrong way of playing the game that you bought. The product is yours to do with as you will, and anyone telling you that you're doing X or Y wrong is simply resorting to how they play the game. You can talk about developers' intent for days, but just like with any form of creative production, once the author or authors release their product in the wild, they really can't control how people will interpret their work, nor do I think they should, and for the most part, neither do they. Death of the author is a real thing, and something people far more clever than me have covered to a much greater extent. Is it clever or clever? I think it's far more clever. Anyway, problems may arise when people jump between groups or otherwise encounter situations where their approach to an RPG is fundamentally different to that of the other person's. Maybe my group absolutely hated the metaplot of Vampire and threw it out the window, spending years developing our own unique take on the premise but keeping all the rules, while that person's group instead played meticulously close to the presented setting, but kind of just didn't care about the dice rolling. Die rolling? English is hard. Neither approach is wrong, and you will probably never find any published book saying they are. World of Darkness has always been quite frank about player and storyteller agency with this in my experience, but it can cause clashes for sure. My lore videos can often come across as this is how it is, and most of the time I'm either getting information directly from the sources, or I'm extrapolating based on what we know. It would never occur to me to, for example, make a video about how Sasha Vikos is actually an agent of the Camarilla in Deep Undercover, because there is no official material, as far as I know, to support this theory, nor has it ever been raised in one of the books. Again, as far as I know. But that should never stop anyone from running a chronicle where that could be the case. I think one of the great advantages and flaws of online role-playing is how often we're exposed to these differences now. When I was younger, back in the last century, I lived in a fairly isolated community, and everyone who played World of Darkness games there knew each other. Or at least knew about each other. It wasn't until much later, when I was able to buy the games of my own, that I learned of the metaplot. I'd only ever owned the core rulebook, so my understanding of the setting made by Werewolf was really limited in that regard. Essentially, I think the culture of Session Zeros has never been more important when you're playing online with other people. Because I think any opportunity for you to sit outside of a game to discuss its premises, before you get personally involved in said game, offers you an opportunity to alter your expectations. If you jump straight in, it can be jarring when you realize that things you were taking for granted are completely absent from the game you're in, and vice versa. If you're playing in a group that you've known for years, maybe the Session Zero will be more angled towards what you hope to roleplay, what kind of a character you want to test out, and things like that. And you don't need to worry too much about consent, lines, veils, and such, because you as a group, you've already kind of reached a point where you know this. But it helps provide a framework for you to work inside of, and may help catch something that could not only ruin the game for you, but also potentially ruin a budding friendship outside of the game. I feel like I'm drifting away a little bit from the topic at hand, which is, again, why I like to play World of Darkness. For me, the core theme of World of Darkness has always been human nature. I understand this is a broad and kind of almost pointless distinction considering how many things you can put into that category and still be able to argue that it's part of human nature. But I believe that I experience the most fun when I'm playing a game where I can reflect on how my character struggles with or differs from my own ideas and thoughts as a human being. And the World of Darkness is so good at delivering on that premise. Aside from Hunters Hunted and Project Twilight, it's incredibly rare for you to play anything that is 100% human in any World of Darkness game. Even Hunters have been imbued with powers beyond our understanding, and while a few creatures of the night may have once been human, they are something else now. Not necessarily not human, but either more or less than what they were. Before I continue, keep in mind that these are my interpretations of these games, and the whole reason I made that aside about Death of an Author is to ensure that it's clear that just because this is how I see Vampire, it doesn't have to be the way you see it. Vampire is a game about either holding on to what makes you a human so that you can retain your sanity and sense of self, or, later on, shedding that humanity for morals and ethics alien and impossible for humans to hold on to. Humans are key to your existence, both as a source of food, but also as servants, friends, pets, or even threats. It is also a game about exploitation of generations, of self-replicating systems of oppression where the old stay in power and the young are made to fight for scraps. The only thing you as a new vampire can do is to rage impotently against these injustices, or create new vampires whom you can manipulate instead. Or of course just, get in line and be part of the system. That is a way to play too. Even if you join the Sabbat, which at its very core was founded to battle this jihad, you find the same patterns repeating themselves again, as if to say that you can't escape humanity and our weaknesses, no matter how you dress it. Werewolf is a game where you are taught that humanity itself is causing the destruction of Gaia, the world that you were literally born to protect. It's a game where you must decide if you are willing to sacrifice the lives and futures of human beings, often many human beings, in order to save the greater whole. If it can even be saved. It is about moral absolutism and inherited sins, about indoctrination and intolerance and terrorism, and so many, many more very human problems of society. It is a game about living in a society that dictates how things should be, and that refuses to change, despite being shown again and again that it has failed miserably at what it set out to do. The ghosts of your ancestors haunt you, they're poisoning your thoughts, and their influence can be felt even to this day, as each and every bridge they burned carries repercussions for your generation. Mage is about competing ideologies, about progress at the expense of individualism, about the right of free thought and the dangers of dogma. It is about exceptionalism in both the positive and negative light, and how our ambitions may prove our undoing, and the undoing of those around us. It is about how we can convince ourselves that our versions of the future is the only thing worth striving for, and how sacrifice can always be justified by pointing to the results. Mage at its core is about proving others wrong and you right. Each mage is an individual of exceptional power and will. Now that part is important, but this very fact they are often unable to cooperate or find a lasting compromise. And those who do may in turn turn totalitarian or oppressive, narrow-minded and intolerant of outside ideas. It is the paradox of tolerance and absolutism, where you need to be absolutely convinced that your view of the world is the correct one in order to even become a mage. Wraith is about holding on to the hope that there is something better for you, but it is also about regret. Regrets of choices, of crushed hopes or unfulfilled ambitions. No one becomes a Wraith if they lived a happy life, and each Wraith has to constantly struggle with learning to let go, to accept their inability to fix what has been done, in order to cease existing and go to what they hope is the afterlife. Fear of this uncertainty, and the fear to let go, will eventually turn toxic and harmful, and transform these Wraiths into specters who will only seek to drag others down with them, refusing to let themselves or others find any sort of peace in their death. In Wraith, our struggle is to be willing to have faith and hope even when everything seems hopeless, and to let go of things we believe define us as people. Changeling is about the spark of joy and creativity we all once held, but that was taken from us as we had to grow up. It is about treasuring your uniqueness, about standing out and being proud of it, and about wanting respite from a world turning more and more cynical and bitter around us. Changeling, by its very nature, is childish, naive, and hopeful, and it spits in the eye of the world of darkness. It says, "So what?" when accused of this, and it reminds us that we don't have to lose that part of ourselves when we grow up. It's also about being a minority, of struggling to have your voice heard, as the banality of life constantly urges you to be normal, to be like everyone else. I'm sure there are plenty out there who don't see things the way I do, and that's perfectly fine. For many, playing Werewolf is a form of power fantasy, taking that frustration and feeling of helplessness when you see what is happening in the world and doing something about it. Even if it's in a game, that's an outlet and a way to channel that energy into something constructive and positive. Some might want to explore undying love in Vampire, to see it be tested and hold true over the ages, against all the odds, to see love bloom in the most desolate and horrible of landscapes, even when everyone around them tells them that love is impossible for a creature like them. And maybe Wraith is about the horrors of disappearing without a trace, to be forgotten, and about desperately clinging to what made you you. Or maybe you just want to run down the streets of Los Angeles wielding a prosthetic as a bludgeoning tool and having insightful conversations with stop signs, None of these views are invalid, if you ask me. And this is why I think The World of Darkness remains such a powerful, evocative setting so many years down the road. Despite a massive drop in sales, fan engagement and hard work kept this setting alive for many, many years and will continue to do so, because it provides one of the richest, deepest, and most explorable worlds I've ever encountered in role-playing games. The World of Darkness is a lampoon of our reality. It is everything taken to its extremes. And it wouldn't be that if it ignored what makes human existence so unique and fascinating. The World of Darkness can be hilariously bizarre, heart-wrenchingly tragic, and spine-chillingly horrifying. Chillingly? I feel like that's not the right word. Unlike so many of its competitors, it digs deep into our own world, warts and all, and presents to us a dark reflection of our normalcy. And it says, look at how absurd our existence is. Look how interesting and peculiar and quirky and unique you are, a human. Look at our past and our future and our present, and tell me there is anything more interesting and confounding out there. Let's just wrap it up in a little bit of supernatural powers, and you got the World of Darkness. And that is why I like the World of Darkness. The three grandchildren of Cain wait patiently for the time of judgment to arise. Bambi Parsons, a leader with an unbreakable will. Procyon, who has been reborn as a god amongst Cain's angels. And Dougal, whose thirst for blood is matched only by his strength of will and purpose. Their childhood, the Methuselah, control our every move through their timeless jihad. They are Her Satanic Majesty Dany, whose mere presence chills the heart. Maximilian S. Hardcastle, a tutor and master of the jihad. Socrates Johnson, a masterful craftsman of stories. Lauren Eason, a trustworthy ally and friend. Alexander Kushtaria, esoteric scholar and mentor in magecraft. And Snow, who oversees the progress of the council patiently from the shadows. On the Council of the Primogen are seated Edward Reed, Ian Nichols, Raven Fang, the Autumn Alchemist, and Michelle Light, wise leaders and of good judgment. This week, the Council would wish to thank the Elder Quinn Sullivan for your continued support. We deeply appreciate your wisdom and belief in our endeavors. We would also wish to give our regards to the Ancile Victor Quiroz, whose services to the Council has not gone unnoticed. Thank you for your support. Naturally, all our elders, Ancile, and neonates receive our gratitude from the bottoms of our hearts. Without your support, this would not be possible. And thank you for watching. Now be careful out there, for Gehenna may soon be upon us.